The clock struck exactly 3:33 a.m. when Leah awoke once more, gripped by that familiar sense of unease. It wasn't the first time the numbers had aligned in such a way in her life. 11:11, 22:22, 3:33, as if time itself were conspiring to reveal something beyond her understanding. Sitting on the edge of her bed, gazing out at the sleeping city through the window of her 20th floor apartment, she wondered if she was finally losing her grip on reality. As a data analyst for a major corporation, Leah had always prided herself on her logical mind and her ability to discern patterns amidst chaos. But the events of the past few months defied any rational explanation. First, there were the recurring dreams of a golden spiral that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Then came the coincidences, unlikely encounters, conversations that seemed to answer questions she had only pondered in her thoughts, books that tumbled from shelves, falling open to pages containing the very answers she sought. On this particular night, as her fingers drummed nervously against the windowsill, Leah recalled the words of her grandmother, a simple woman from the countryside who always said that the universe spoke through signs. At the time, she dismissed such ideas as mere superstitions of a less enlightened generation. Now at 35, she began to wonder if there wasn't some wisdom in that simplicity, something her scientific education couldn't quite explain. Quantum. Physicist David Bohm, in his theory of the holographic universe, suggested that the reality we perceive is only a fraction of a much larger and more complex whole. According to him, there exists an implicit order underlying the visible reality, where everything is interconnected in a constant flow of information and energy. Leah had stumbled upon this theory during her late-night research sessions, when sleep eluded her and questions multiplied in her mind. The moonlight filtered through the clouds, casting dancing shadows across her room. It was as if the cosmos itself were choreographing a silent dance, inviting her into a dialogue she didn't yet know how to begin. The words of Deepak Chopra echoed in her memory. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. Yet something deep within her insisted that there was a greater meaning to it all, an encoded message waiting to be deciphered. Her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand, a message from an unknown number. Sometimes the answers we seek lie in the silence between the questions. A shiver ran down Leah's spine. The message vanished as soon as she tried to reread it, as if it had never existed. Was her mind playing tricks on her? Or was this yet another sign the universe was sending? In her work, Leah was accustomed to dealing with algorithms and probabilities. She knew that coincidences were merely random events that our minds attempt to connect in search of meaning. But the frequency and precision of these events in her life were beginning to challenge even her most deeply held convictions. How could she explain that? Just as she decided to resign from her job, she stumbled upon an article about digital entrepreneurship that seemed to have been written especially for her. Or that, at the very moment she questioned whether she should move to another city, she received a remote job offer that would grant her the freedom she had long desired. The physicist Wolfgang Pauli, in his collaboration with Carl Jung, had developed the concept of synchronicity, seemingly coincidental events that carry profound meaning for those who experience them. For them, these meaningful coincidences were manifestations of a causal order that connected the physical world to the psychic realm. Leah was beginning to suspect that she was living her own experience of synchronicity on a global scale. Rising from her bed, she walked over to her desk and opened her laptop. The screen cast a bluish glow on her face as her fingers danced across the keyboard, meticulously documenting every strange event of the past few months. Perhaps, if she could arrange all these occurrences into a timeline, a larger pattern might emerge. That was what her analytical mind craved: data, structure, order. But as she typed, a new sensation began to take root in her chest. It was no longer just curiosity or skepticism, but something deeper, more primal. It was as if every cell in her body was awakening to an ancient truth, a wisdom that had always been there, buried beneath layers of conditioning and rationality. The horizon began to brighten, painting the sky with hues of pink and orange. That Morning, Leah watched the sunrise with a different gaze. For the first time, it wasn't just an astronomical phenomenon she witnessed, it was an invitation to delve into the mysteries the universe was so persistently trying to reveal to her. And so, in that sleepless dawn, her decision was born to plunge headfirst into this investigation, no matter where it might lead. The Department of Quantum Physics at Central University wasn't the kind of place Leah imagined she'd find answers to her existential questions. Yet there she was, walking through its austere hallways, following the signs to Dr. Gabriel Martinez's laboratory. His name had surfaced repeatedly in her research on consciousness and quantum reality, and when she discovered he taught just a few blocks from her apartment, Leah recognized yet another sign from the universe. Gabriel wasn't the stereotypical scientist she had expected to meet. At 40 years old, with prematurely graying hair and intensely green eyes, he exuded an energy that blended scientific curiosity with profound spirituality. His laboratory, unlike any other, featured mandalas on the walls and crystals strategically placed among state-of-the-art equipment. Quantum physics reveals that reality is not what it seems, Gabriel began, pouring chamomile tea into cups adorned with sacred symbols. The double-slit experiment proved that matter behaves differently when observed. In other words, our consciousness directly affects the reality we perceive. Leah absorbed every word, recognizing in them echoes of her own experiences. Gabriel continued, explaining how the theory of quantum entanglement suggested that particles that have interacted remain connected, regardless of the distance between them. It's as if the universe is a vast web of invisible connections, he explained, his eyes gleaming with enthusiasm. When you tug on a thread here, something stirs on the other side of the cosmos. As he spoke, Leah noticed how the laboratory equipment seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. A nearby electromagnetic field meter began to register inexplicable spikes in activity. Gabriel smiled as if this were an everyday occurrence. Reality responds to our presence, to our intention. It's no coincidence that you're here today. He shared his own experiences with synchronicities, including how he came to quantum physics after a near-death experience that completely transformed his worldview. Science and spirituality are not opposites, he declared. Different languages describing the same fundamental reality. The work of Amit Goswami, a quantum physicist frequently cited by Gabriel, suggested that consciousness is the foundation of all reality, not individual consciousness, but a universal consciousness in which we all partake. This perspective offered a scientific explanation for phenomena that classical physics could not comprehend, including the synchronicities Leah was experiencing. Your dreams of the golden spiral, Gabriel remarked, surprising Leah as she had not mentioned this detail, are representations of the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern that appears throughout nature. It's as if your subconscious is tuning into the very language of the universe. The hours passed like minutes that afternoon. Gabriel showed Leah experiments demonstrating how water responds to different intentions and emotions, forming distinct crystals when exposed to positive or negative words, as revealed in the studies of Dr. Masaru Emoto. Masaru Emoto. If water responds in such a way, he pondered, imagine the impact our thoughts and emotions have on the quantum field surrounding us. Before departing, Gabriel handed Leah a rose quartz crystal. To amplify your intentions, he explained. But remember, the power does not lie within the crystal itself, but within your consciousness. The crystal is merely an amplifier, like an antenna that helps tune into the right frequency. As she left the laboratory, Leah felt as though she had discovered a crucial piece of the puzzle she had been trying to assemble. The science that had always been her safe harbor was now opening doors to a deeper understanding of reality. The synchronicities in her life were not mere coincidences, they were manifestations of a quantum connection to the whole. The sun was setting as she arrived home, painting the sky with the same hues as the spirals in her dreams. On her table lay a card that hadn't been there when she left. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. This time Leah didn't question the origin of the message. She was beginning to understand that some questions don't need answers. They need to be lived. The scent of sandalwood and lavender filled Elena's small apartment, creating an atmosphere that seemed to exist outside of time. At 65, Elena carried in her brown eyes the wisdom of many lifetimes. Her long, wavy white hair framed a face marked by smiles and deep contemplation. Leah met her through Gabriel, who described her as a keeper of ancestral wisdom. "The universe does not speak our language," Elena began, pouring a cup of tea made from herbs grown in her own vertical garden, "but it is constantly communicating with us through symbols, sensations, and synchronicities. The problem is that we have been conditioned to ignore these signs, to dismiss them as irrelevant or impossible." Seated on a floor cushion, Leah watched as the afternoon light danced through the crystals hanging in the window, casting small rainbows. That moved around the room. Elena explained how ancient traditions, from Greek oracles to indigenous shamans, understood the dialogic nature of the universe. Each culture developed its own tools to decode this cosmic language, she continued. The I Ching, tarot, runes, they are all different alphabets for reading the same story. Carl Jung's work on archetypes and the collective unconscious provided a bridge between this ancestral wisdom and modern psychology. Elena elucidated how the symbols that appear in our dreams and synchronicities are manifestations of these universal archetypes, resonating across time and space. "Your golden spiral," Elena smiled, gently touching Leah's hand, "is a universal symbol of expansion and growth. It appears in the way galaxies are structured, in the double helix of DNA, in the pattern of a simple seashell. When this symbol repeatedly surfaces in your life, it is an invitation to expand your consciousness." Elena shared practical techniques to heighten perception and strengthen the connection with this universal intelligence. She taught Leah to meditate by observing the breath, to keep a journal of dreams and synchronicities, and to create personal rituals that transform ordinary moments into gateways to the sacred. "The universe responds not only to our conscious requests," she explained, "but primarily to the vibration we emit. This is why we sometimes receive something different from what we asked for, because our vibration aligns with a different frequency." The words of Eckhart Tolle echoed in this teaching. Life is not as complicated as the mind makes it seem. Elena explained how our rational mind often becomes an obstacle to communicating with the universe, creating noise that interferes with receiving subtle messages. As the afternoon progressed, Elena guided Leah through a creative visualization exercise. "Close your eyes and imagine your intention already fulfilled," she instructed. "Don't just see it, but feel it as if it were already real. The universe does not distinguish between physical reality and vivid imagination. Both generate similar energetic fields." Leah felt a profound peace settle within her being during the exercise. It was as if every cell in her body vibrated at a different frequency. When she opened her eyes, she noticed that the pattern of rainbows on the wall had shifted, forming the exact spiral she had seen in her dreams. "There are no coincidences," Elena smiled, as if reading her thoughts. "Every moment is an opportunity for dialogue with the infinite. The question is, are we willing to engage in that conversation?" Before leaving, Elena handed Leah a small handmade notebook, its pages crafted from recycled paper and its cover adorned with sacred symbols from various traditions. "To record your dialogues with the universe," she explained. "Every synchronicity is a word in a greater conversation. In time, you will learn to read the book the universe is writing through your life." On the sidewalk in front of Elena's building, Leah took a deep breath of the night air. The stars seemed brighter, as if winking in complicity. A black cat crossed her path, stopped, looked directly into her eyes, and then moved on. The office was quiet that Monday morning when Leah arrived earlier than usual, her cubicle, once adorned only with post-it notes and spreadsheets, now discreetly housed the crystal Gabriel had given her and Elena's notebook. The past few weeks had transformed her perspective on everything, including her work environment. As she turned on her computer, she recalled the conversation she'd had with her boss the previous Friday. Sandra, typically pragmatic and straightforward, had surprisingly shared a personal story about how the universe had guided her during pivotal moments in her career. "Sometimes, Leah," she said, "the best plans are the ones life designs for us." It was as if the universe was confirming through Sandra that Leah was on the right path. The words of the mystic Rumi echoed in her mind. What you seek is seeking you. Ever since she began paying attention to the signs, Leah noticed how every moment carried subtle messages. The project number that landed on her desk, 1111. The name of the new client, Synchronicity Solutions. The book a colleague casually left on her desk, The Tao of Physics by Fritjof Capra. During her lunch break, Leah opened the notebook Elena had given her and began mapping out the patterns she had been observing. They were not mere isolated coincidences, but an intricate web of interconnected events. As Jacobo Grinberg Zilberbaum had theorized in his studies on synergic theory, reality seemed to reorganize itself in response to his expanded consciousness. An unexpected email interrupted her train of thought. It was an invitation to present a project at an international conference on data analysis and emerging patterns. The proposed theme, recognizing hidden patterns, the mathematics of coincidences. Leah smiled, recognizing yet another piece of the puzzle falling into place. That afternoon, during a particularly tedious meeting about quarterly metrics, Leah noticed how the light streaming through the window formed geometric patterns on the floor. She recalled Gabriel's words about how sacred mathematics is present everywhere, waiting to be recognized by attentive eyes. A colleague remarked on how she seemed different in recent weeks. There's something different about you, Leah. A light, perhaps. She knew it was true. Her vibrational frequency was shifting, and the world around her was responding to that change. As Elena had explained, when we raise our consciousness, we attract experiences that resonate with this new frequency. At the end of the day, as she tidied her desk, Leah found a folded note she didn't remember receiving. On it, a quote from Albert Einstein. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as if nothing were a miracle. The other is as if everything were a miracle. It was yet another reminder that magic does not reside in extraordinary events, but in how we perceive the ordinary. The journey home that day felt different. Every green traffic light, every person who smiled as they crossed her path, every song playing from the cars that passed by, it all seemed part of a perfectly orchestrated cosmic choreography. Leah was learning to dance with the universe, moving in rhythm with the synchronicities. Back in her apartment, seated on her small balcony, she observed how the city lights formed earthly constellations that mirrored the starry sky above. The universe was constantly creating fractals of meaning, repeating patterns across different scales, like an infinite melody played in varying octaves. Leah's first yoga class didn't begin as she had anticipated. The studio was closed due to a leak, and the students were redirected to a nearby garden. What initially seemed like an inconvenience turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Practicing outdoors under the golden light of dawn created an entirely different experience from what she would have had within four walls. The instructor, a woman named Maya, had a presence reminiscent of Eleanor, though she was decades younger. Our body is an instrument of perception, she explained as she guided the class through the first poses. Every cell is an antenna, constantly tuned to the frequencies of the universe. As the practice progressed, Leah began to feel something she had never experienced before. It was as if each movement opened new channels of energy within her body. Deepak Chopra's words about the body as a field of infinite intelligence began to resonate on a visceral level. Maya introduced the concept of pranayama, the conscious control of breath. Breath is the bridge between the visible and the invisible, she explained. When we breathe consciously, we attune our frequency to the very pulse of the cosmos. Leah noticed how her natural breathing had already shifted over the past few weeks, becoming deeper and more rhythmic. During the final meditation, lying on the grass still damp with dew, Leah felt a profound connection with the earth beneath her body. Each beat of her heart seemed to echo the pulse of the planet. Bruce Lipton, in his studies on cellular biology, had demonstrated how our cells respond not only to chemical signals, but also to energetic frequencies. Leah was experiencing this truth firsthand. After class, Maya shared an insight with Leah about her practice. "You have a unique frequency," she said. "When we allow ourselves to vibrate at our natural frequency, the universe responds in harmony." It was exactly what Gabriel had explained about quantum fields, but now Leah was feeling this reality within her own body. On her way home, Leah noticed how her steps naturally fell into rhythm with a distant melody. A flock of birds flew in formation overhead, creating a pattern that resembled the spiral from her dreams. It was as if the entire universe was performing a perfectly synchronized dance, and she was finally learning the steps. In her apartment, she experienced a new way of relating to the objects around her. Each item seemed to emanate its own unique frequency. The rose quartz crystal Gabriel had given her pulsed with an energy more intense than before. She began to rearrange her space, guided not by logic, but by an intuition that arose from her newfound sensitivity to these frequencies. That night her dreams were different. Instead of the usual golden spiral, she found herself dancing with the very particles of the universe. Each movement created waves of light that rippled through the cosmos, touching distant galaxies. It was a dreamlike representation of what quantum physicists call non-locality, the idea that everything in the universe is instantaneously connected, regardless of distance. The small cafe where Leah used to work on Saturday mornings had become her personal laboratory for manifestation. Seated by the window, with her laptop open and Eleanor's notebook beside her, she began to systematically document her experiences with the power of intention. Lynn McTaggart, in her book The Intention Field, had extensively documented how focused thoughts could influence events and even alter the molecular structure of water. Leah decided to conduct her own experiments, starting with simple goals and gradually increasing their complexity. Her first conscious intention was to manifest a meaningful encounter that could aid her on her journey of discovery. 3 days later, she met a retired physics professor at the same cafe, who not only was familiar with Gabriel's work, but had also participated in groundbreaking experiments on consciousness and quantum reality. The success of this first experiment encouraged her to expand her practices. She began using positive affirmations, not as mere mechanical repetitions, but as statements charged with emotion and vivid visualization. As Elena had taught, the key did not lie in the words themselves, but in the vibrational frequency they generated. One day, while preparing for an important presentation, Leah decided to try something different. Instead of obsessing over every detail, she focused on visualizing the desired outcome, a seamless presentation that would inspire and transform her audience. To her surprise during the presentation, the words flowed effortlessly, and slides she hadn't planned seemed to materialize exactly when needed. Dr. Joe Dispenza, in his studies on neuroplasticity and change, emphasizes how our thoughts and emotions literally rewrite our biology. Leah began to notice subtle shifts in her body, more energy, better sleep, and an overall sense of well-being that seemed to radiate from within. However, not everything was an immediate success. Some intentions seemed to meet resistance, as if the universe were testing her persistence and sincerity. It was then that she recalled Gabriel's words about the importance of detachment. "An intention is like a seed," he had said. "You plant it, nurture it, but you don't obsessively dig it up to see if it's growing." On a particularly hectic afternoon at the office, Leah had an epiphany. Amid the chaos around her, phones ringing, people rushing, deadlines piling up, she realized that her ability to remain centered had fundamentally shifted. She was no longer just a passive observer of reality, but a conscious co-creator. Eckhart Tolle's teachings on the power of the present moment took on new depth. Each moment revealed itself as a gateway to the infinite, an opportunity to align with the universal intelligence that Gabriel had described in scientific terms and that Elena had translated into practical wisdom. During a particularly tense meeting, when a colleague began aggressively criticizing her project, Leah remained anchored in her newfound frequency. Instead of reacting defensively, she observed how the energy in the room shifted as she maintained her own elevated vibration. Gradually, the hostility dissolved, transforming into a constructive dialogue. The concept of Maya from Hindu tradition, the illusion of a separate reality, began to make sense on an experiential level. The apparent divisions between people, events, and circumstances revealed themselves as different expressions of the same unified consciousness. As Thich Nhat Hanh taught, everything interexists, and every moment contains the entire universe. The auditorium was packed for the International Conference on Data Analysis. Leah, preparing for her presentation on recognizing hidden patterns, felt an unexpected calm. She was no longer the same person who had embarked on this journey months ago. Her presentation transcended the technical and touched on the universal. Using data and algorithms as metaphors, she demonstrated how seemingly random patterns reveal an underlying intelligence that permeates all existence. The golden spiral from her dreams naturally appeared in her slides, now understood as a symbol of the infinite expansion of consciousness. As she concluded her talk, Leah shared a profound truth. The universe does not merely respond. It dances, with us, in an endless symphony of creation. Every thought, every intention, every moment of expanded awareness contributes to this cosmic dance. The audience's questions revealed that others, too, were ready for this message. Scientists, analysts, and executives shared their own experiences with synchronicities and inexplicable phenomena. The dialogue between science and spirituality that Gabriel had initiated was expanding into broader circles. After the conference, alone in her hotel room, Leah opened Eleanor's notebook, now filled with months of observations, insights, and synchronicities. Each page told the story of her transformation, not merely as an observer of the universe, but as an active participant in the cosmic dialogue. The universe always responds, she now knew. The question isn't whether it is speaking, but whether we are ready to listen, to dance, to co-create. And in that moment, as the light of the setting sun painted the sky with the colors of her dreams, Leah knew her journey was only just beginning.